Hello everybody and welcome to this brand new guide for Unreal Engine 5. We're going to be using Unreal Engine 5.1. You can use whatever version you'd like. However, just know that the further ahead you get or the further behind you get, we might have some differences in our UI and things like that. So this guide will be for complete beginners. We're going to lightly touch on certain UI elements within the engine, but for the most part, we're going to do a little bit of a throw you right in version of learning, and I'm going to do my best to explain things so that even the novice of novices can keep up. When you open Unreal Engine for the first time, you'll get something that looks similar to this. However, you probably won't have any games open over here on the right-hand side. That's perfectly fine. What we're going to do is we're actually going to go over here and we're going to click on Games. And luckily, Unreal Engine includes default packages that let you get started a little bit faster than starting with absolutely nothing, which you can do if you choose with the blank option. However, we are not going to do that. We're actually going to move over and click on the first person option. And other than that, we're going to keep it on Blueprint. We'll keep the target platform as desktop. Quality preset, you can set it to whatever you want. If you've got a low-end machine, you might want to drop this. Keep the starter content on and do not include ray tracing, as that is just a bunch of performance stuff we don't need to worry about when we're very first starting the Unreal Engine. And I'm just going to name mine Beginner Tutorial and hit create. When it finishes loading, it should look something like this. This is the default level that Unreal Engine creates for you, and it just includes a lot of meshes and things for you to play around with if you're new. What we're going to do is briefly go over what you can see on the UI though. So this big thing here in the center that lets you see everything that's in the game right now is called the viewport. And up here, you can actually see a little tab that's currently open called the viewport. On the right-hand side, at the top, you'll see we have an outliner. This is everything that's currently included in your Unreal Engine level. If we were to click something like this SM Cube 4, and you'll see down here, it has now been outlined and selected. And if we hit F, or you can remember it as find, it will take us to the selected object in our world. Underneath the outliner, you can see we have the SM Cube 4 selected. This is the details. You'll see the little tab here, and it says details. This is everything we need to know about this current object that we have selected. A lot of stuff in here probably doesn't make sense yet. Like, for example, if you're new, what's include component in HLOD? You don't know, I don't know. Don't worry about it. We're going to slowly build up to knowing what a lot of this is. But also, there's a lot of stuff in here that just makes sense. Do you want it to cast shadows? Yes or no? There's a lot of easy and there's a lot of hard, but do not worry, we're going to start with a lot of the easy stuff. And that's pretty much all I want to go over for the UI right now. And the last thing I want to go over is the content browser. Right now we can't see it, and that is because in Unreal Engine 5 it is default hidden. This is because it's very nice to have this big wide open space on your screen so you can see what you're doing, so they just automatically hide the content browser when we're not using it. In order to see it, hold Control and press space. Now we have a content browser. This includes everything in our project, not just the level or the scene, but the entire root folder of the project. This is everything in it. If we ever want to play test our level, up here we have a little green play button, and if we press it, you'll see that now we can navigate our game like this. If we pick up the gun, we can shoot it. And there you have it. If you press escape, you will exit the playtest. If you want to fly around the 3D space while you're not play testing your game, just hover your mouse over the viewport, hold in right click, and you can use W, A, S, and D and move your mouse around to navigate the 3D space. You can also press E to elevate yourself or Q to descend. Now that you have a basic understanding of the UI elements and somewhat how to navigate the engine, let's take a look at creating a simple door. Doors are a great example and something to start with because you can create a very basic door that when the player approaches, opens up. Or you can create a super advanced door that requires 3 separate keys to be in place, a puzzle to be finished, it's got lights on it. We can go absolutely crazy with it. The complexity of a door can be as simple as walking up to it to all the way to just absolute madness. So today, we're going to start with a very basic door, and going forward, we're going to keep creating more and more complex doors until we fully understand the Unreal Engine. If you're following along, go ahead and hit Control Space. Now, the thing you want to know about game development is you want to stay organized, and you want to stay organized from the very beginning. So what we're going to do down here in the content browser is we're going to right-click, and we are going to create a new folder. I'm going to name mine Brandon Winkler _ Blueprints. You can name yours whatever you'd like. However, I would recommend it being something to do with blueprints, as that's what we're going to put within the folder. Go ahead and open this up, and from within this folder, we're going to go ahead and create another folder, and we're going to call this Doors, because every single door blueprint is going to go within the Blueprints Doors folder. Once that's open, right click and move up to a blueprint class. Now, a blueprint class is basically anything in a game that has more than one component and does anything. So outside of geometry. So for example, on the left-hand side there, you can see that we have that cube selector, that rectangle. It's just geometry, so it's not an actor, or it's not a blueprint. It is just geometry. An actor or a blueprint has more components and is more complex. So in order to make a door that actually has function, we need to create a blueprint. So after we hit blueprint class, you'll see that we need to pick a parent class. We're not going to get too much into what this means for right now. However, what we're going to do this time is pick actor. A door is an actor. And what we're going to do is we're going to name this door _ BP for blueprint. Go ahead and double click it to open it up. With it open, you'll see that it probably created a new window. You can leave it like this, or what I recommend is just grabbing this tab and bringing it all the way up here to the top to full screen it with the rest of your project. Now we can just switch between the tabs whenever we want to go back to the map versus the door's blueprint. Now this UI is very similar to the one we just had. However, there are some changes. The right-hand side, as you can see, is still the details, but the left is a little different. Consider this top left segment, named components, kind of like your outliner, but within a blueprint. This components tab is going to include every single thing that is included in this blueprint, which as of right now is nothing because we just created it. And underneath it, you'll see that there's some details about the blueprint. We got things like graphs and functions, variables, but again, don't panic. We'll get to that. For now, what we're going to do is we need to add a component to our blueprint. This is going to be the visual for the door, the space it occupies and its visuals. This is called a static mesh. Now, the difference between a static mesh and a regular mesh is that anything that isn't a static mesh is usually used for animation, like the facial features on a character, for example. Whereas a static mesh doesn't do a lot of animating. It may move, but not animate or bend, things of that nature. So let's go ahead and add a static mesh. We're gonna click the add up here, and you can see it's already suggesting static mesh to us. However, on the off chance you can't see it, you just start typing in the word static, and it's suggesting static mesh to us. So we can go ahead and click it. Now you'll see that we got this weird widget icon that we can move around, but there's nothing here. That's because right now the static mesh is empty. I'm gonna go ahead and return that back to the center of the blueprint. So within the details, we're going to add the door. You can see here that under the details, we have a spot to select a static mesh. Now you're probably wondering, well, I don't have a door. Well, luckily you do. Unreal Engine includes a door mesh in the starter content that we included in the project. So if you just hit the drop down menu and start typing in door, you'll see that boom, now we have a door mesh that we can work with. For now, we're going to go ahead and hit save and compile. The difference between saving and compiling is that saving takes the state of the file and just saves it, whereas compiling runs through the code and makes sure there's no errors, because an engine won't let a set of flawed logic through because it could brick your computer. So whenever you compile, it's basically just saying, hey, this code works, it's not going to break anything, you're good. So you always want to save and compile. Something we missed on, or I missed out on, is I didn't name the static mesh. Always, always, always name. Remember what I said. You want to be as organized as possible as early as possible. So since we didn't name it, go ahead and click on it and press F2 on your keyboard, and you'll see that now we can rename it. I'm going to call this door underscore SM for static mesh. So great. We have the door here, and if we go back to our first person map tab, hit Control Space to get the content browser, and drag it out, you'll see it now takes up physical space, and we have a door. We have this static mesh, and we created that simply with the BP. However, it currently doesn't do anything. If we were to play test and go up to it, you can see that it doesn't do anything, and in fact, look, I can walk right through it. So we're not quite done yet. Now this is a rare case where the static mesh doesn't already have pre-built-in collision. What I mean by collision is that I can run into it. For example, this geometry has collision. As you can see, it stops me. It doesn't let me go through. Whereas the door, I can go right through. It doesn't have any collision. So we're gonna fix that really quick by hitting Control Space. Oh, we can go ahead and close that. And then go up here and click on All. What that's gonna do is it's gonna bring you to the very, very, very highest level folder. And within search, we are now gonna type in door. And you'll see the SM door that comes pre-made with the Unreal Engine is right here. So if we double click on it, it'll bring us to a separate window that shows us all the details about this specific static mesh. Well, luckily, adding collision to this is very, very simple. Up here at the top where it says collision, we're going to drop that open, and we're going to hit Add Box Simplified Collision. And now you can see with the green box, the door now has collision. If we save this, then go back to the first person map tab and hit play, you'll note that now we don't go straight through the door. It actually has a presence in the world and we can't go straight through it. Brief intermission. I just wanted to let you know that I have a Patreon down below. It helps support me to make these videos. If you're enjoying them and want me to be able to keep doing these, please consider supporting my Patreon. Let's get back to it. However, let's get back to the door BP. Right now, the door exists, but it doesn't have any function. So we need something to trigger in order for the door to know that it needs to open. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another component. We're going to hit up here and we're going to click add, and we're going to type in the word box. And we're going to click on box collision. Now this is something that might be a little confusing at first because we just added collision to the door. Is this the same type of collision? In this case, no, actually, this is not the same type of collision. We're going to be able to walk through this box and it won't be visual, we won't be able to visually see it within the world. However, it does contain the code to let the blueprint know that something has collided with the box. So therefore, we can use it as a way to know if the player has gotten close enough to prompt the door to open up. Now, there's two ways to change the size of this box. One of them is incorrect. So you'll know over here on the right hand side, there's this thing called transform, and we have a scale. So naturally you might think, well, if I increase the scale, it will increase the size of the box. Well, while you're correct, it's actually a very bad habit to change the size of things using scale. There are limited uses for this, but for the most part, get out of this habit as early as possible. What we're going to do is we're going to set all this back to 1. And instead, there's this thing here that says box extent. We're going to use this to increase the size of our box. The first thing I'm going to do is move our box to the center of the door. If you do not have this tool, if you don't have the arrows here to move the box, then that means you might be on rotation or scale. Press W to get to the move tool, and just for reference, E is your rotation and R is your scale. However, W is how we're going to move. So I get it roughly center. It doesn't have to be perfect, something like that. And now what we'll do is we will change the size of this box. I'm gonna do, I don't know, maybe 100 across the board. Yeah, something like that. Just so if the player gets close, we know that it will open. It doesn't need to be too large, but obviously we don't want it to be too small. And we will save and compile. So now the box exists, but if we go playtest, obviously, even though we're approaching and we're entering the box, nothing's happening. That's because it's not programmed yet. So what we need to do in the door BP is switch to what is called the event graph. You'll note that there's already things here. However, we're going to actually just grab all those and press delete. To navigate the event graph, all you have to do is hold right click and move your mouse, and you'll see that you move around the event graph. And of course, you can scroll to zoom in and out. This is where we're going to put all of our code. However, we are using Blueprint, so it's going to be a version of visual scripting instead. For a lot of people, this is a good thing. For some people, you might want to use C++, and I am not the person for you. If you are a C++ person, I would recommend Unity or another Unreal Engine developer that prefers the C++. However, I use the visual scripting. So what we want to do is make it so if the player goes within the box, the door opens. So the first thing we want to do is make it so we can detect when the player overlaps the door, or I'm sorry, the box. And luckily, Unreal Engine has that pre-built. If we right click on box and we go to add event, there's this thing here that says on component begin overlap. We're going to click that. Now you'll note that this node is red and it has a big arrow on the left hand side. That's because this is an event. This is something that happens or gets called to run some code. You can't run code without an event. So, on component begin overlap. What we need to do is make sure that whatever is overlapping the box that we created is indeed the player. Because in theory, we might have bullets, we might have boxes and enemies. We specifically want the player to open the door. In order to do that, what we want to do is go down here to other actor. And we're going to click on this pen, hold down left click and drag out. Once we release, we'll get a separate box that lets us search through all the kinds of nodes that we could want. However, in this case, we want to check and see if it's the first person character. So that's what we're going to type in. First person character. So we're going to use the node cast to blueprint first person character, or BP. Now, how does a cast work? What is a cast? A cast means that you are going to attempt to communicate with another blueprint. So in this case, we are going to attempt to communicate with the first person character. And the object that we're communicating with is going to be whatever the other actor is. So, if it's successful, because it is indeed the first person character, it'll launch this arrow here, and we can put some code on it. If it fails, we're actually going to leave this empty because we only want something to happen if it's the first person character. So now we can start setting up the code to open the door, because now we have a thing that looks for the first person character overlapping the box. However, unlike the onComponent begin overlap, there is no event called open door. That is something we're going to have to create ourselves. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on the event graph, and I'm going to type in the word custom. And you'll see here that we can add a custom event. We're going to click on that, and we're going to call this open door. And now we can go up here, and after cast a BP first person character, we can drag out of this pin and check it out. We can type in open door, and we can now call the newly made function that we just created. So player overlaps box, it is indeed the player, open door. However, now we have to code the door opening. There's a couple ways to go about this. However, my favorite way to do it is by using something called move component. So we have our list of components up here, and we need to move one of them. So I'm going to grab the door SM, and I'm literally just going to drag it onto the event graph and drop it. And then I'm going to line it up so it's nice and neat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out from this, and I'm going to type in move component. And you'll see at the bottom there, it says move component 2. I'm going to click on that and plug in open door to the move node there at the top. And you can see we have all kinds of stuff here. We have relative location, relative rotation, we have ease in and out, we have how long we want it to take, and whether we want it to be the shortest rotation path possible. We have all kinds of stuff we can do here. However, currently we don't know what the numbers are going to be because we haven't tested it. So let's head back to the viewport here and actually test what the numbers are going to be. Let's click on the door SM, and on the right hand side under the transform, we can see that its default position and rotation is all zeros, which is perfect because it makes this very easy. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to press E on my keyboard with the door selected so we get the rotation tool. And on the Z axis, which is blue, I am now going to start rotating the door until it's in an open position. So you'll see that for the open position, it's going to be at, it says negative 89.99 repeating. However, you can literally just grab that, type in negative 90 and press enter. That happens sometimes, but it's negative 90. So now we know. Let's put that back at 0 where it was and head back to the event graph. So now we know whenever we want the door to open, the target relative rotation is going to be negative 90. And let's just change this to be about 1 second. So it takes about 1 second to accomplish this. So now we have our visual script set up here. Let's go ahead and hit save and compile. Go back to the first person map tab and hit play. Let's approach the door and see if we've coded it correctly. And just like that, we have done our first basic door. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And I have a Patreon down below if you enjoyed the tutorial and would like to support me so I can continue to make this type of content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.